Admiral Kim Do-hyun watched through the viewing window as another human ship exploded in the darkness of space. The bright flash lasted only a second before the cold vacuum swallowed the light. That was the third destroyer they had lost in the past hour. Earth's defense fleet was dying, and everyone on the orbital station knew it. "Sir, the Vorthak ships are moving closer," Captain Park Ji-woo said from behind him. His voice was steady, but Kim could hear the worry underneath. They all knew what was coming. Kim turned away from the window. The command center buzzed with activity as officers tried to coordinate what remained of Earth's defenses. Red lights flashed on every screen. Warning alarms had been going off so long that someone had finally turned them off. The silence felt worse than the noise. "How many ships do we have left?" Kim asked. 17 destroyers, 8 cruisers, and 2 battleships, Park replied, reading from his tablet. "The Vorthak still have over 300 vessels." Kim nodded slowly. The numbers had been bad from the start, but now they were impossible. The Vorthak Empire had swept through 17 star systems in the past 5 years. They had crushed every human colony they found. Earth was supposed to be humanity's last stand, but it looked more like their grave. The Vorthak ships were unlike anything humans had ever built. They looked more grown than constructed, with curved surfaces that seemed to flow like living tissue. Their weapons could punch through human shields like they were made of paper. Their armor could absorb direct hits from humanity's strongest missiles and barely show a scratch. "Sir, we're getting a transmission from the Vorthak flagship." Lieutenant Han Soo-jin called from the communication station. "Put it on screen," Kim ordered. The main display flickered and showed the face of War Commander Thelvas. The alien had gray skin stretched tight over sharp bones. His eyes were completely black like pools of oil. When he spoke, his voice came through the universal translator as a low growl. "Human Admiral," Thelvas said, "your resistance is impressive but pointless. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick." Kim stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. "We don't surrender. That's not what humans do." Thelvas made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your species amuses me. You fight with such passion even when defeat is certain. Very well. We will show you what happens to those who refuse our mercy." The transmission ended. Within seconds, every sensor on the station lit up with new contacts. More Vorthak ships were moving into attack position. "All units, this is Admiral Kim," he broadcast to the remaining fleet. "We know how this ends, but we're going to make them pay for every inch of space between here and Earth. Make your shots count." The battle that followed was brutal and one-sided. Human ships threw everything they had at the enemy fleet. Missiles streaked through space in waves. Energy beams cut through the darkness. For a few moments, it looked like the humans might actually hurt the Vorthak forces. Then the aliens showed them what real power looked like. Weapons that humans had never seen before turned their ships into clouds of glowing gas. Beams of purple light reached out from the Vorthak vessels and simply erased whatever they touched. Human shields that had been designed to stop anything known to science failed completely. Kim watched Captain Park's ship die in silence. The young officer had been like a son to him. Now he was just another brief flash in the night. "Sir," Dr. Han Soo-jin said quietly, "we're the last station left." Kim looked around the command center. Half the workstations were dark now. Smoke drifted from damaged equipment. Through the viewing windows, he could see the massive Vorthak fleet approaching like a storm front. "Doctor, do you still have access to the deep space communication array?" he asked. "Yes, sir, but barely." "Why?" Kim walked over to her station. "I need you to send a message. Ultra-long range, maximum power. Send it to coordinates 847-221-109. Han Soo-jin's fingers moved across her console. "Sir, those coordinates are way outside the galaxy." "There's nothing out there. Just send the message," Kim said firmly. "The message is the garden needs tending. That's it?" she asked, confused. "That's it." Han Soo-jin sent the message just as the first Vorthak weapons hit their station. The lights went out for a moment before emergency power kicked in. The deck shuddered under their feet. "Sir, I don't understand," Park said. "What's at those coordinates?" Kim smiled for the first time in hours. "Hope, Captain. Just hope." The Vorthak bombardment intensified. Explosions rocked the station from all sides. Bulkheads began to buckle. The artificial gravity flickered on and off. "All hands abandon station," Kim ordered over the intercom. "This is not a drill. Get to the escape pods now." As his crew ran for the evacuation bays, Kim stayed at the communications console with Dr. Han. She was frantically trying to boost the signal strength on his mysterious message. "Sir, the message went out," she reported. "Maximum range, maximum power." "But I still don't understand what—" "You don't need to understand," Kim said gently. "You just need to trust that 37 years of planning is about to pay off." A massive explosion threw them both to the floor. The station's hull was breaking apart. Through the cracks in the walls they could see open space. "Time to go, Doctor," Kim said, helping her to her feet. They made it to the last escape pod, just as the station's core went critical. The small pod shot away from the dying structure just in time to see it disappear in a ball of white fire. Through the pod's small window, Kim watched the Vorthak fleet move toward Earth. The planet looked so small and blue against the black sky. So peaceful. It was hard to believe that billions of people lived down there, waiting for the end to come. "Sir," Dr. Han said, checking her portable scanner, "I'm picking up some strange readings." "What kind of readings?" "Energy signatures in deep space. Very faint, but getting stronger." "And sir, there are a lot of them." Kim leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. After all these years of waiting and planning, it was finally time. The greatest deception in human history was about to be revealed. On the Vorthak flagship, War Commander Thelva studied the tactical display with satisfaction. The last human defensive position had been destroyed. Earth lay helpless before his fleet. Soon, another species would join the long list of races that had fallen to Vorthak might. "Commander," his tactical officer reported, "we intercepted a human transmission just before their final station was destroyed." What did it say? "The garden needs tending." It was sent to coordinates far outside the galaxy. Probably a desperate message to any human colonies that might have escaped our notice. Thelvas made a dismissive gesture. "Fear makes them grasp at impossible hopes. Begin the bombardment of their major cities. I want this planet broken before we land our troops." The Vorthak ships turned their massive weapons toward Earth. Cities that had stood for thousands of years were about to become clouds of radioactive dust. Humanity's story was about to end with fire and screaming. But as the first bombardment began, sensors throughout the Vorthak fleet began to detect something impossible. Energy readings were appearing in deep space, far beyond the outer planets. Readings that suggested something very large was moving toward them. "Commander," the tactical officer said, his voice uncertain, "we're detecting massive energy signatures approaching the system." "From where?" Thelvas demanded. "Everywhere, sir. They're coming from all directions." Thelva stared at the tactical display as hundreds of new contacts appeared on the screen. Whatever was coming toward them was big, very big, and moving faster than anything in his fleet could match. "Impossible," he whispered. "We destroyed their entire fleet. There's nothing left." Dr. Han Soo-jin, floating in her escape pod between the wreckage of human ships and the approaching alien fleet, watched her scanner with growing amazement. The energy signatures were getting stronger by the minute. Something was coming through space toward them. Something that made the Vorthak fleet look small. "Admiral," she whispered into her communicator, "I think your message worked." Kim's voice came back through static and interference. "Doctor, what you're seeing is just the beginning. Humanity's real war is about to start." As the first explosions bloomed on Earth's surface, tears of light began to open in the fabric of space itself. Something that had been waiting in the darkness between galaxies was finally coming home. The Vorthak had conquered 17 star systems. They had crushed every human military force they had encountered. They thought they knew everything there was to know about humanity's capabilities. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In the depths of space, Admiral Kim Do-hyun smiled as he watched the approaching lights grow brighter. 37 years of preparation. 37 years of the greatest secret in human history. The Vorthak thought they had defeated humanity's army. They had no idea that humanity's real army hadn't even arrived yet. 37 years earlier, Director Yoon Taemin stood in a secret bunker deep beneath the mountains of Korea. The room was filled with Earth's most brilliant minds, scientists, engineers, military strategists, and visionaries who all shared one terrible understanding. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and whoever else was out there probably wasn't friendly. "Ladies and gentlemen," Yoon began, his voice echoing in the underground chamber, "the Kepler telescope has confirmed our worst fears. We are not the first intelligent species in this galaxy, and based on the evidence we've gathered, we may not survive long enough to be the last." The massive screen behind him showed images from deep space. Radio signals that clearly came from artificial sources. Energy signatures that could only be produced by massive spacefaring civilizations. And most disturbing of all, the sudden silence of signals that had been broadcasting for centuries. Something is moving through our galaxy, Yoon continued. Something that destroys other civilizations. The pattern is always the same. Active radio signals for hundreds or thousands of years, then sudden silence. Whatever this threat is, it's systematic. It's thorough. And it's coming our way. Dr. Lee Hyejin, one of Earth's top aerospace engineers, raised her hand. What's the timeline? How long do we have? Based on the pattern of dead civilizations, we estimate between 30 and 50 years before they reach our region of space, Yoon replied. Which means we have one generation to prepare for a war we can't afford to lose. Engineer Choi Min-ho leaned forward in his chair. What kind of preparation are we talking about? Earth's military is strong, but if we're facing something that can destroy entire civilizations, conventional preparation won't be enough, Yoon said. Whatever's coming has technology far beyond ours. They've had hundreds or thousands of years to perfect their weapons while we've been stuck on one planet. In a straight fight, humanity loses. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. These were people who had spent their lives solving impossible problems, but this seemed beyond any solution. However, Yoon continued with a slight smile. We do have one advantage. They don't know we exist yet. We're too far away and too primitive for them to consider us a threat. That gives us time to do something they won't expect. He clicked a button, and the screen changed to show a star map with hundreds of marked locations. I present to you Project Long Harvest. We're going to seed the galaxy with hidden human colonies, each one more advanced than Earth's public technology. When the enemy finally arrives at Earth, they'll think they're destroying humanity's only stronghold. They'll have no idea that our real strength lies scattered across 1,000 star systems. Captain Lee Hyejin studied the map carefully. The logistics alone would be staggering. We'd need thousands of ships, millions of colonists, resources beyond anything Earth has ever attempted. Which is why this project will take 30 years to complete, Yoon replied, and why it must remain absolutely secret. As far as the general public knows, we're simply expanding our deep space exploration program. They can't know that we're actually preparing for a war that hasn't started yet. The next decades passed in a blur of activity that most of Earth's population never suspected. While the world's media focused on routine space exploration missions, the real work of humanity's survival was happening in secret. Ships that appeared to be simple research vessels actually carried the seeds of humanity's future. Each one was loaded with advanced technology that wouldn't be invented on Earth for decades. Fusion reactors that could power entire star systems, manufacturing equipment that could build anything from raw materials, genetic banks containing the diversity of Earth's entire biosphere. Captain Lee Hyejin commanded one of these ships, the Pioneer's Dream. On paper, she was conducting a routine survey of the Kepler 442 system. In reality, she was establishing humanity's first deep space military base. Control. This is Pioneer's Dream, she transmitted back to Earth. We've completed our survey of Kepler 442b. The planet shows interesting mineral deposits but is unsuitable for human habitation. What she didn't say was that the planet was perfect for what they actually needed. Hidden beneath the surface, her crew was building factories that could produce warships using technology decades ahead of anything on Earth. The unsuitable for habitation part was true enough. The colonists would live in massive underground cities that couldn't be detected from space. Engineer Choi Min-ho worked on the project's most ambitious goal, developing technology that could match or exceed whatever the galaxy's destroyers possessed. He had teams working on theoretical physics that most Earth scientists thought was pure fantasy. The key is thinking beyond what we know is possible, he explained to his research team. Our enemy has had centuries to develop their weapons. We have 30 years. We can't match their experience, so we have to leap past their technology entirely. His laboratories produced breakthroughs that seemed like magic, ships that could phase through normal matter, weapons that could manipulate space and time, communication systems that worked faster than light across galactic distances. Each innovation was immediately shipped to the hidden colonies, where it was refined and improved. The most important part of the project was secrecy. Earth's public military had to remain genuinely limited. When the enemy arrived, they had to see exactly what they expected. a primitive species with crude weapons and limited technology. The real Earth fleet was small and weak by design. "This is the hardest part," Director Yoon explained to his senior staff during one of their regular meetings. "We have to let Earth remain vulnerable. We have to let our people think they're weaker than they really are, because the moment our enemy suspects that we're more advanced than we appear, the entire strategy fails." As the years passed, the long harvest colonies grew into something magnificent and terrifying. Forge worlds where entire fleets were constructed in secret. Research stations where the laws of physics were rewritten. Training facilities where humans learned to fight with weapons that hadn't existed when the project began. The colonies also discovered something unexpected. They weren't the only peaceful species in the galaxy. Hidden among the stars were other races that had survived the Great Destroyer by being too small or too remote to notice. These species had knowledge and technology that complemented humanity's innovations. The Whisper Folk were energy beings who could travel through space without ships. The Stone Dancers could manipulate matter at the molecular level. The Dream Weavers understood quantum mechanics in ways that human science was only beginning to grasp. All of them had one thing in common. They had lost their homeworlds to the same enemy that was now approaching Earth. "We're not building just a human fleet," Captain Lee reported during one of her rare communications with Earth. "We're building an alliance of everyone who has ever suffered under their rule. This is bigger than just saving humanity. This is about taking back the galaxy." The final piece of the puzzle was psychological warfare. The enemy had to believe they were winning. Earth's defeat had to look real, feel real, and be broadcast across the galaxy for everyone to see. Only then would they drop their guard and reveal the full extent of their forces. When they arrive at Earth, Director Yoon explained in his final briefing before retiring, they must see exactly what they expect to see. A desperate, outmatched species making a heroic last stand. They'll destroy our public fleet and begin bombing Earth, confident that they've won another easy victory. And that's when 37 years of preparation finally pays off. The secret communication. Networks buzzed with activity as the Vorthak fleet was first detected approaching Earth. Every hidden colony received the same message. Prepare for the moment they had trained for their entire lives. On the forge world of Kepler 442b, Admiral Seo Jun-ho walked through hangar bays that stretched for miles underground. 50,000 warships waited in the darkness, each one more advanced than anything the Vorthak had ever encountered. His crews were humans who had been born and raised in space, trained from childhood to fight with weapons that could reshape reality itself. "Admiral," his aide reported, "we've received Admiral Kim's signal from Earth. The garden needs tending." SEO nodded slowly. After decades of waiting, it was time to reveal humanity's greatest secret. The enemy thought they were destroying a primitive species. They had no idea they were walking into a trap that had been 37 years in the making. On research stations hidden throughout the galaxy, alien allies received their own signals. The Stone Dancers began awakening weapons that could turn entire enemy fleets into harmless dust. The Whisper Folk prepared to carry human strike teams directly through enemy shields. The Dream Weavers charged devices that could make Vorthak ships forget how to exist. Back on Earth, as Vorthak weapons began burning human cities, Dr. Han Soo-jin watched her scanner display fill with impossible energy signatures. The readings showed massive objects moving through space at speeds that violated everything she thought she knew about physics. "What am I looking at?" she whispered to herself. The answer was simple and terrifying. She was looking at humanity's real military force. Ships that had been built in secret over 4 decades, crewed by humans who had never set foot on Earth, armed with weapons. The signal reached Kepler 442b, just as Admiral Seo Jun-ho was finishing his morning inspection of the underground shipyards. The message was simple, 4 words that had been planned 37 years ago. "The garden needs tending." Seo stood perfectly still for a moment, letting the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. Around him, the massive underground facility that had been his home for 20 years suddenly felt different. No longer a hidden base preparing for war. Now it was the command center for humanity's greatest military operation. "All department heads to the command center immediately," he announced over the facility's communication system. "Authorization code Omega-7. This is not a drill." Within minutes, the command center filled with people who had spent their entire adult lives waiting for this moment. General Nam In-soo, who commanded the mobile combat divisions, Chief Engineer Bae Young-mi, whose ships defied the known laws of physics, Communications Director Ryu Dong-wook, who maintained contact with hidden colonies throughout the galaxy, dozens of others, all wearing the same expression of grim determination. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Seo began, "we've just received the signal from Earth. The Vorthak Empire has arrived, and Admiral Kim has initiated the final phase of Project Long Harvest. After 37 years of preparation, it's time to show the galaxy what humanity is really capable of." He activated the main display, which showed a real-time tactical map of the Milky Way galaxy. Thousands of points of light marked the locations of hidden human colonies. Each one represented years of careful planning and construction. Each one was about to reveal weapons and ships that the enemy couldn't imagine. "Engineer Bae, what's the status of our fleet?" Seo asked. Bae Young-mi consulted her tablet with fingers that barely trembled. 50,000 vessels of various classes, all fully operational. We've got everything from single-person fighters to mobile command stations the size of small moons. Every ship is equipped with quantum manipulation drives, reality distortion weapons, and adaptive shielding systems. General Nam stepped forward. "Admiral, our ground forces are ready as well. 2 million combat personnel trained in zero-gravity warfare, plus another million support staff. Each soldier is equipped with powered armor that makes them faster and stronger than anything the Vorthak have encountered." "And our allies?" Seo asked Director Ryu. "All allied species have confirmed readiness," Ryu reported. "The Stone Dancers have awakened their molecular disintegration arrays. The Whisperfolk have charged their phase transit networks. The Dreamweavers are preparing their quantum consciousness weapons. Everyone who has suffered under Vorthak rule is ready to strike back." Admiral Seo walked to the viewing window that looked out over the underground shipyards. Miles of advanced warships stretched into the distance, each one representing humanity's determination to survive. These weren't the crude vessels that Earth's public knew about. These were machines of war that had been designed by people who had nothing to lose and everything to fight for. "Begin Phase 1, he ordered. "All hidden colonies are to activate their fleets and move to jump coordinates. We strike in 6 hours. Throughout the galaxy, installations that had remained hidden for decades suddenly burst into activity. On the mining world of Ross 128b, massive doors opened in what appeared to be empty mountainsides, revealing shipyards that had been carved from solid rock. Ships that looked more like living creatures than machines emerged from their hiding places and began moving toward predetermined coordinates. Captain Shin Dayun walked through the hangar bay of the carrier ship Eternal Storm, inspecting the fighter craft that would soon see their first real combat. Each fighter was small enough to be piloted by a single person, but packed enough firepower to destroy a Vorthak cruiser. More importantly, they were fast enough to dodge attacks that moved at near light speed. "Remember," she told her pilots during their final briefing, "everything you've trained for comes down to the next few hours. The enemy thinks they're fighting primitive humans with crude weapons. Show them what 4 decades of advancement looks like. Show them what happens when humanity has time to think." The pilots nodded silently. They were young men and women who had been born in the hidden colonies, raised from childhood to fight a war that most of Earth's population didn't even know was coming. They had never seen Earth's blue skies or felt natural sunlight on their faces, but they knew exactly what they were fighting for. Meanwhile, on the forge world of Kepler 186f, Chief Engineer Park Kyung-soo made final adjustments to humanity's most ambitious creation, ships that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. The largest of these vessels, the Universe-class dreadnought called Infinite Resolve, was over 50 miles long and contained technology that seemed like magic even to the people who had built it. "Sir," his assistant reported, "all quantum manipulation systems are online. Reality distortion fields are stable. The ship's consciousness core is fully activated." Park nodded with satisfaction. The Infinite Resolve wasn't just a ship. It was an artificial intelligence that could think faster than any biological mind and control weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics in local space. It was humanity's answer to any enemy that thought technology had limits. On Earth, the Vorthak fleet was systematically destroying human cities. War Commander Thelvis watched the bombardment with the satisfaction of someone who had done this many times before. The humans were fighting back with everything they had, but their weapons were crude and their tactics predictable. Another species was about to join the long list of civilizations that had fallen to Vorthak might. "Commander," his tactical officer reported. "We're detecting some unusual energy readings from deep space." "Unusual how?" Thelvis asked without looking away from the destruction of human cities. "Very large energy signatures approaching from multiple directions. They appear to be moving faster than light, which should be impossible for any known human technology." Thelvis finally turned to look at the tactical display. Hundreds of contacts were appearing on the screen, approaching the solar system from all directions. Whatever was coming was big and moving very fast. Could these be human reinforcements from their outer colonies? He wondered aloud. "Unlikely, sir. We've mapped all known human settlements. They don't have the technology for faster-than-light travel, and even if they did, they don't have enough ships to create this many contacts." Thelvis studied the display more carefully. The approaching objects were huge, larger than his own flagship, and there were so many of them that they were starting to block out sections of space. "All ships prepare for possible combat," he ordered. "Whatever these contacts are, they're not on our star charts." Back on Kepler 442b, Admiral Essio watched his fleet emerge from jump space at the edge of the solar system. 50,000 ships that had never appeared on any enemy's sensors suddenly materialized in perfect formation. Each vessel was a masterpiece of engineering that combined human innovation with alien knowledge gained over 4 decades of secret alliances. "All ships, this is Admiral Seo," he broadcast on the command frequency. "Today we end 37 years of hiding. Today we show the galaxy that humanity is not a species that can be easily destroyed. Remember your training, trust your equipment, and fight for everyone who has suffered under Vorthak rule." The response that came back was the voices of 2 million humans who had spent their entire lives preparing for this moment. Men and women who had been born in space, raised in hidden colonies, trained with weapons that defied conventional understanding. They were humanity's true children, not the people of Earth, but the people of the galaxy. "Phase 2 is beginning," Admiral Seo announced to his command staff. "All ships advance to attack positions. Let's show the Vorthak what real war looks like." The human fleet began moving toward Earth's solar system in a formation that seemed to flow like liquid. Ships phased in and out of normal space, making it impossible for enemy sensors to get accurate counts or targeting solutions. Fighters darted between larger vessels like schools of metallic fish. The massive dreadnoughts moved with surprising grace for objects the size of asteroids. On the Vorthak flagship, alarms began sounding as sensors detected the approaching fleet. Thelvis stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The number of contacts was growing every second as more human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. "How many ships are there?" he demanded. "We've counted over 40,000 so far and more are still arriving," his tactical officer reported with obvious fear in his voice. "Sir, this is impossible. Humans don't have this kind of technology. They don't have this many ships." Thelvis felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest: doubt. His empire had destroyed 17 star systems. They had crushed every human military force they had encountered. But this fleet approaching them wasn't anything like the crude vessels they had been fighting. "Signal the home fleet," he ordered. "We need immediate reinforcements." "Sir, the nearest reinforcement fleet is 6 days away." Thelvis looked at the tactical display again. The human fleet would be in weapons range in less than an hour. For the first time in his military career, he was facing an enemy that outnumbered and possibly outgunned his own forces. "All ships, prepare for battle," War Commander Thelvis had conquered 17 star systems, but he had never seen anything like what was approaching his fleet. The human ships moved through space in ways that violated every law of physics he understood. Some seemed to phase in and out of reality itself. Others left trails of distorted space-time behind them, and their numbers kept growing as more vessels emerged from what appeared to be holes in space itself. "Sir, the human fleet has reached weapons range," his tactical officer reported, voice tight with barely controlled fear. "Open fire," Thelvis commanded. "All ships, full bombardment. Whatever technology they're using, they're still just humans. Our weapons will tear them apart." The Vorthak fleet unleashed a devastating barrage. Purple beams of energy that had destroyed countless worlds streaked across space toward the human ships. Missiles that could shatter moons launched in waves. For a moment, the space between the fleets was filled with enough destructive force to sterilize an entire planet. Then something impossible happened. The human ships simply weren't there anymore. Captain Shin De-yoon watched from her fighter's cockpit as the Vorthak weapons passed harmlessly through the space where her squadron had been moments before. Her ship's AI had calculated the precise moment to phase into what humans called shadow space, a dimension that existed parallel to normal reality. All fighters, return to normal space in 3, 2, 1. Mark, she commanded. The human squadron materialized directly behind the Vorthak battle line, their weapons already charging. Shin's fighter carried quantum disruptors that could convince matter to stop existing on a molecular level. She targeted the nearest enemy cruiser and fired. The Vorthak ship didn't explode. It simply ceased to be, as if it had never existed at all. One moment it was a massive warship bristling with weapons. The next moment there was only empty space and confused radio chatter from the surrounding vessels. What just happened? Thelvis demanded as reports flooded in from across his fleet. Ships were disappearing without warning. Weapons were failing to hit targets that should have been easy to destroy. And worst of all, the human fleet was growing larger as more vessels continued to arrive. Sir, the humans appear to be using some form of space-time manipulation, his science officer reported. Their ships are phasing in and out of our dimensional space. Our weapons can't target what isn't there. Admiral Seo Junho watched the battle unfold from the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Vigilance. The massive ship was more than just a command vessel. It was a mobile space station that could coordinate the actions of thousands of other ships simultaneously. Its quantum computers processed information faster than biological minds could follow. Tactical, what's our status? He asked. Tactical Officer Go Seung-woo consulted his displays. Sir, we've destroyed 47 Vorthak vessels without taking a single loss. Their weapons can't lock onto our ships while we're phase shifted, and our quantum disruptors are tearing through their armor like it's not even there. And their response? Confused and increasingly desperate. They're trying to concentrate their fire, but our ships are attacking from multiple dimensions simultaneously. They can't defend against enemies they can't detect. SEO nodded with grim satisfaction. 37 years of preparation had led to this moment. Every technological breakthrough, every hidden alliance, every carefully planned deception had been designed to create exactly this scenario. An enemy that had no idea what they were really fighting. On the Vorthak flagship, panic was beginning to set in. Thelvis watched his fleet being systematically dismantled by weapons and tactics he couldn't comprehend. Ships that had conquered entire civilizations were being destroyed by human fighters that moved like living things. Signal the human fleet, he ordered. I want to speak with their commander. A few moments later, the image of Admiral Seo appeared on the main screen. The human looked calm and composed, as if the destruction of a Vorthak fleet was just another day's work. War Commander Thelvis, Seo said formally. I am Admiral Seo Junho of the Human Deep Space Fleet. You have two options. Surrender immediately, or watch your entire fleet become a footnote in galactic history. Impossible, Thelvis snarled. Humans are a primitive species. You have crude weapons and limited technology. What we're seeing is some kind of trick, some deception. SEO smiled coldly. You're absolutely right, Commander. This is a deception, but not the kind you think. For 37 years, we've let you believe that Earth represented the full extent of human capabilities. We've let you think we were weak and divided. We've encouraged you to see us as just another primitive species ready for conquest. The truth hit Thelvis like a physical blow. The Earth fleet, your public military, was exactly what we wanted you to see, Seo confirmed. A small, outdated force that would make you overconfident. While you were tracking our official colonies and fleets, we were building an entirely separate civilization in the spaces between stars. Hidden shipyards, secret research stations, military bases that your sensors could never detect. On the bridge of the Infinite Resolve, Chief Engineer Bae Young-mi watched her creation unleash its full power for the first time. The massive dreadnought's reality manipulation systems were operating at peak efficiency, turning entire sections of space into zones where the normal laws of physics simply didn't apply. Vorthak ships that entered these zones found themselves moving backward through time, their weapons firing at targets that no longer existed, their communication systems receiving messages from their own past. The effect was devastating not just physically but psychologically. How do you fight an enemy that can make cause and effect work backward? Ma'am, her engineering team reported, all quantum manipulation systems are operating within acceptable parameters. The ship's AI is learning and adapting to enemy tactics in real time. Bae nodded as she watched the tactical display. Each Vorthak ship that was destroyed provided more data for the Infinite Resolve's artificial intelligence to analyze. The ship was literally becoming smarter and more dangerous with each passing minute. Captain Park Ji-woo, who had escaped Earth's destruction in an emergency pod, watched the battle through his pod's small viewing window with a mixture of awe and terror. The human ships moved through space like dancers, their formations flowing and shifting in patterns that seemed choreographed. Weapons that he had never imagined possible reached out to touch enemy vessels, and those vessels simply stopped existing. "Dr. Han," he said over the communication link. "Are you seeing this?" Dr. Han Soo-jin's voice came back filled with wonder. "Captain, I'm reading energy outputs that shouldn't be possible. These ships are operating on principles that are decades ahead of anything I've studied. How did we develop this technology without anyone knowing?" The answer came from Admiral Kim Do-hyun, whose escape pod was drifting nearby. "Doctor, what you're seeing is what happens when the best human minds are given unlimited resources and 37 years to solve a single problem: how to survive when facing a superior enemy." As the battle continued, it became clear that the Vorthak fleet was doomed. Their ships were being destroyed faster than they could retreat. Their weapons were useless against enemies that could phase in and out of reality. Their armor, which had protected them against every other species they had encountered, was no match for weapons that could manipulate matter at the quantum level. But Admiral Seo wasn't content with simply destroying the Vorthak fleet. He wanted to send a message that would echo across the entire galaxy. "Open a channel to all ships in the system," he ordered. "Include the Vorthak frequency. I want everyone to hear this." When the channel was open, Seo began to speak in a voice that carried the weight of 4 decades of preparation and the hopes of every peaceful species in the galaxy. "To all who are listening," he began, "today marks the end of one age and the beginning of another. For too long, aggressive empires like the Vorthak have terrorized peaceful civilizations. They have conquered and destroyed with impunity, believing that might makes right." On the Vorthak flagship, Thelvis listened with growing horror as more human ships continued to arrive. The fleet that was destroying his forces was just the advance guard. The main human armada was still coming. "But today," Seo continued, "the galaxy learns that peaceful species are not helpless. We are not victims waiting to be conquered. We have been preparing, building, and growing stronger, and now we are ready to defend not just ourselves, but every civilization that chooses cooperation over conquest." The last Vorthak ship in the outer system exploded in a ball of purple flame. The once mighty fleet that had conquered 17 star systems had been reduced to debris and radio static in less than 3 hours. "War Commander Thelvis," Seo said, turning his attention back to the enemy flagship, "your fleet is destroyed. Your ships are burning. Your soldiers are dead. But I'm going to give you something your species has never given to others: a chance to surrender." Thelvis stared at the tactical display in shock. Of his 300 ships, only his flagship and a handful of escorts remained. The rest had been destroyed by weapons that seemed to come from the realm of magic rather than science. What are your terms?" he asked, his voice hollow with defeat. "Simple," Seo replied. "You will return to your homeworld and to live." The throne room of Emperor Velthar was carved from a single massive crystal that had been taken from the ruins of the first civilization the Vorthak had conquered. For 800 years, it had served as a symbol of his empire's dominance over the galaxy. Today, as War Commander Thelvis knelt before him with news of the most devastating military defeat in Vorthak history, the crystal seemed to dim. "Explain to me again how 300 ships were destroyed by a species we classified as primitive," Emperor Velthar said, his voice carrying the cold fury that had terrorized 1,000 worlds. Thelvis kept his eyes fixed on the floor. "Your Majesty, the humans, they deceived us. Everything we thought we knew about their capabilities was wrong. They had hidden their real military strength for decades. Their ships used technology that seems to bend reality itself." "Technology that bends reality," the Emperor repeated slowly. "And you expect me to believe this?" "Sire, I saw it with my own eyes. Ships that could phase in and out of existence. Weapons that could make our vessels simply stop being. They destroyed my entire fleet in less than 3 hours without taking a single loss." Emperor Velthar rose from his crystal throne and walked to the viewing window that looked out over his capital city. Below him, billions of Vorthak citizens went about their daily lives, secure in the knowledge that their empire was the strongest force in the galaxy. Soon he would have to tell them that everything had changed. What else? He demanded. They sent a message, Majesty. The human admiral said that the age of easy conquest is over. He said they're watching, and that any species that chooses aggression over cooperation will face the same fate as our fleet. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. In 8 centuries of rule, no one had ever dared to threaten the Vorthak Empire. The idea that a species they had considered barely worthy of conquest could destroy his finest fleet was almost impossible to process. Summon the War Council, he finally ordered. We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. While the Vorthak Empire struggled to comprehend its defeat, Ambassador Quan Ji Young stood before the Galactic Assembly on the neutral world of Meridian Prime. The Assembly was a loose confederation of species that had survived Vorthak aggression by being too small or too distant to attract attention. For centuries they had lived in fear, knowing that their turn for conquest would eventually come. Today, that was about to change. Fellow beings, Ambassador Quan began, her voice carrying to representatives of 47 different species. Yesterday, the Vorthak Empire learned that the galaxy is not theirs to rule. Their fleet was destroyed by a coalition of species that have been preparing for this moment for decades. The time of hiding in fear is over. The reaction was immediate and intense. Representatives leaped to their feet, shouting questions in dozens of languages. The Meridian Prime translator systems worked frantically to keep up with the chaos. Order, order, called Speaker Zendril, the ancient being who had moderated the assembly for 300 years. Ambassador Quan, are you saying that someone actually defeated a Vorthak fleet in open combat? Not just defeated, Quan replied calmly. Annihilated. 300 ships reduced to debris. The survivors were allowed to escape solely to carry the news back to their empire. A representative of the crystal-based harmonic collective stood up, their voice ringing like bells. This is impossible. The Vorthak have superior technology, superior numbers. How could any force destroy them so completely? Quan activated a holographic display that showed the battle around Earth. The assembled representatives watched in stunned silence as human ships phased in and out of reality, destroyed enemy vessels with weapons that seemed to rewrite the laws of physics, and coordinated their attacks with precision that suggested artificial intelligence beyond anything they had imagined. Who are these beings? Asked the representative of the aquatic depth dwellers. They call themselves humans, Quan replied, and they've been preparing for this war for 37 years. While the Vorthak thought they were conquering primitive settlements, humanity was building a hidden civilization with technology that makes the Vorthak look like children playing with sticks. On Earth, Director Park Chan-wook walked through the ruins of Seoul, surveying the damage from the Vorthak bombardment. The city had been hit hard, but it was already showing signs of recovery. Construction crews worked around the clock to clear debris and rebuild damaged structures. Most importantly, the people were alive and determined to rebuild. Sir, his assistant reported, we're receiving response signals from over 200 hidden installations throughout the galaxy. The revelation of our true capabilities has opened communication channels we've kept closed for decades. Park nodded as he watched a crew of workers raising a new building where a Vorthak missile had left only rubble the day before. And the alien species we've been secretly allied with? All of them are ready to reveal themselves. The Stone Dancers are preparing to share their molecular manipulation technology. The Whisper Folk want to establish formal diplomatic relations. The Dreamweavers are offering to teach us their consciousness transfer techniques. Good, Park said. It's time the galaxy knew that peaceful species don't have to live in fear anymore. The transformation began immediately. Species that had hidden their capabilities for centuries suddenly emerged from the shadows. The Stone Dancers revealed that they had been secretly protecting smaller civilizations by making Vorthak ships forget how to find their homeworlds. The Whisper Folk had been carrying messages between resistance groups across the galaxy. The Dreamweavers had been sabotaging Vorthak operations by implanting false memories in their commanders. But the biggest revelation was humanity's true scope. What the galaxy had thought was a single species on one world was actually a vast interstellar civilization that had been hidden in plain sight. Human settlements existed in systems that other species had never even explored. Technologies that seemed impossible were revealed to be the result of decades of careful research and development. We estimate that there are actually over 5 billion humans scattered across the galaxy, Director Park explained during a conference call with world leaders. They've been living in hidden colonies, developing technologies, and preparing for the day when we would need to defend ourselves and our allies. Emperor Velthar received the reports from across his empire with growing alarm. It wasn't just the humans. Dozens of species that the Vorthak had ignored or overlooked were suddenly revealing military capabilities that his intelligence services had never suspected. The galaxy that he thought he understood was actually full of hidden powers that had been waiting for the right moment to strike back. Majesty, his intelligence chief reported, "We're receiving similar reports from all our frontier zones. Species we thought were harmless are turning out to have been hiding advanced technology. Our forward bases are being asked to leave by beings who clearly have the power to enforce their requests." "How many of our bases are we talking about?" Velthar asked. "All of them, Majesty. It appears that every aggressive action we've taken in the past century has been observed and catalogued by this alliance. They know exactly where all our forces are located, and they have the power to remove us if we don't comply voluntarily." The Emperor walked to his viewing window again, but this time the sight of his capital city brought no comfort. Everything he had built was based on the assumption that the Vorthak Empire was the strongest force in the galaxy. If that assumption was wrong, then everything else might be wrong too. A few days later, Ambassador Quan stood once again before the Galactic Assembly, but this time the chamber was filled with representatives from species that no one had known existed. The Hidden Alliance, as they were calling themselves, had emerged from the shadows to reveal the true balance of power in the galaxy. "Fellow beings," Quan announced, "we stand at a crossroads. For too long, the galaxy has been dominated by a few aggressive empires that used fear and violence to control others. Today we offer a different path." She activated a holographic display that showed the Galactic Cooperation Protocols, a framework for interstellar relations that had been developed over decades of secret negotiations. These protocols establish simple principles, she explained. Peaceful exploration and trade are encouraged. Scientific cooperation benefits everyone. Aggressive expansion against unwilling civilizations will be met with immediate intervention by the full force of the Alliance. The representative of the Vorthak Empire, who had been allowed to attend as an observer, stood up slowly, and if we refuse to accept these protocols, Admiral Seo Junho, who had been sitting quietly in the human delegation, smiled coldly. "Then you'll discover that what happened to your fleet at Earth was just a demonstration. We have the capability to end aggressive empires permanently, but we prefer to give them the chance to transform themselves into something better." "You're threatening us," the Vorthak representative accused. "No," Seo replied calmly. "We're offering you the same choice you've offered to every species you've conquered. Surrender and accept our terms, or face the consequences of your actions." The silence in the chamber was profound. For the first time in galactic history, the predator species were being offered the choice to become